In 2022, Nigeria's grid collapsed 4 times, and in 2023, the nation, or the West African nation, experienced another national grid collapse. At least one energy expert, Dr Toyosi Craig, says a tripping grid is nothing new in that nation.
It's a real impact on the economy, and for example, that's why we have been saying that South Africa cannot afford such, because the Nigerian system somehow has been wired for everybody to have backup, right? So it's a bit easier, kind of. What has been done now is there's a lot of rehabilitation that the government has been going on, but the major causes of this is because the systems are aging. And while we believe there's a lot of new innovation that needs to be done, but the economy is coping in terms of course, there's a lot of losses when you have such scale because it was national. But we're lucky this time around, kind of happened not in the peak period. It was close to the middle of the night. So it would have been worse if it happened in the day. And that's the fear. That what if it happens? And of course, the economic effect cannot be overemphasized. I mean, only God knows how many hospitals doing operation in those periods could have been gone offline.
To speak to Dr. Adeoye Akinola, head of the Pan-African Thought and Conversation Institute at the University of Johannesburg. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Doc. Help us understand why Nigeria continues to go through this with the very particular resource that the country enjoys.
This is very pathetic. And it's really sad that a country with one of the largest deposits of oil and gas can actually be struggling to provide basic electricity to its growing population. Apart from generating electricity from the dam, you also know that electricity can be generated from gas turbine, and Nigeria has that large deposit of gas. But unfortunately, maybe because of maybe distortive policies of past administrations, Nigeria have been unable to actually generate the required capacity for its citizens. Currently, they are generating about 4,100 megawatts, and they have the capacity to generate more than 12,000 megawatts, and that's the situation in Nigeria. But most of the time, such issues are actually because of bad policy approach of the government. But the new administration is actually trying to respond to this, but it's particularly sad that Nigeria is in the situation they are right now, particularly in regards of access to electricity.
How is the new administration trying to address this bad policy approach, given that ordinary Nigerians are not enjoying the benefits of the natural resources the country enjoys?
Well, maybe we have to go 2 steps back, and I know that the electricity in the country became so bad in the 1990s. That's a very long time ago, and when President Obasanjo came into power between 1999 and 2007, he also attempted to fix the problem by actually unbundling the single approach to electricity generation and transmission and dissemination in Nigeria. And what he tried to do was to decentralize it, or maybe we can call it deregulate. But despite the separation of transmission from distribution, we still had epileptic supply of electricity in the country. So when this current president got into power, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he actually promised Nigerians that his own administration would be different because it would make electricity accessible and there would be regular supply. But I don't think Nigeria would have taken him seriously, because that wouldn't be the first time that the government will promise that. I remember during even Obasanjo presidency, the Minister of Power at that time promised Nigeria that within 6 months they will enjoy steady electricity, but that was not the case. But what Ahmed Bola Tinubu has actually tried to do, which for now looks commendable, is because he signed into law this we call the electricity bill. I think in June, that was one of the first things he did in office. And what the electricity bill provides is the legal and institutional framework to improve access to electricity, not just in the urban center or semi-urban center, but particularly in the rural areas. And what he did was also to as an advocate for this devolution of power, and he tried to replace the Electric Power Sector Reform Act, which was enacted in 2005. And what this means in reality is that now in Nigeria, states, which we call provincial government in South Africa, state government will now have the authority to give license to private companies, to individuals, to actually generate power and operate mini grids and power plants within their state confines. And this is actually something that Tinubu believes will increase the capacity that Nigeria has.
A not so popular decision was the scrapping of the fuel subsidy. Do you believe there's a method to that decision?
It was actually a very naive decision by the government to come to power and announce such important policy during the inauguration speech. Many people will argue that perhaps maybe the president will have been in power, get to power, observe and actually let your decision be based on research and now decide on what policy to take in terms of the crude oil sector. But when he announced the removal of subsidy, if you go to Nigeria now, people actually suffer. Inflation has jumped up because many people depend on crude oil in terms of, we call it petrol and diesel in Nigeria, not just for transportation system, but to actually power their electrical power plants, something we call generators in Nigeria. So they use, in fact, most families in Nigeria don't even depend on the national grid. Most companies do not depend on the national grid. Many have even removed themselves from the national grid, but they depend on this oil, this processed oil to power their generator. And because it's now exceedingly expensive, outrageously expensive, it is a problem in Nigeria because prices are just going up. So the policy is very unpopular.
Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Dr. Adeoye Akinola, head of the Pan-African Thought and Conversation Institute at the University of Johannesburg.